What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Danelle Hallan, and I am back with another true crime video. But before I can dive into any of that, I need to just mention a few things really quickly. My most recent video with Nicole Olson in regard to her and her two daughters, Alexa and London, unfortunately was age restricted by YouTube, which has only happened to a handful of my other videos, like less than 5. And they're not pushing it out to anyone, which is really frustrating because this is a case that was very, very well known. It happened back in 2019 and it went viral in all of media, but then completely went quiet. And a lot of people that were kind of in that beginning hype don't realize that the case is still not closed. And the families are basically fighting with the sheriff's department to get the case to be closed and to get some sort of resolution. Make sure, first of all, that you have my notifications turned on because a lot of my videos are not being pushed to my subscribers, especially when something like that happens. They just like blacklist my name for a while. Also, make sure you go to my channel, click on the videos tab and look for that specific video. It should pop up if you're above the age of 18, and please give it a watch and make sure to share it so it still gets out there. Second of all, if you hear my cat screaming in the background, it's because I refuse to let them go outside, which obviously means that they are now in a maximum security prison, and they're not pleased with that. They're plotting their ways to escape at the moment. Now that we have all of that out of the way, we can jump right into today's case. So today we are going to be discussing the disappearance of two very, very vulnerable individuals back in the summer of 2015. 21-year-old Diamond Bynum, who has a cognitive impairment, and her 2-year-old nephew, King Walker, vanished from their home in the middle of a nap. Like literally 40 minutes, they're there, all of a sudden they're gone. And their sudden disappearance triggered a massive search effort. But despite this extensive initial effort taken by law enforcement, efforts that have now very significantly slowed, if not halted, and the continued dedication of family members, neither Diamond nor King has ever been found. And it has been almost 10 years at this point. Media attention on the case has been limited, and the investigation encountered numerous obstacles, including a lack of an Amber Alert, difficulties obtaining information for a PI, and now a lack of communication and progress from law enforcement. It's just sitting stagnant, and it's left Diamond and King's families with a sense of abandonment. Not only that, but leads in missing persons cases, they just naturally decline over time. That's a part of how it goes. But in this particular instance, they seem to stop abruptly early on in the investigation. There is just a great deal of uncertainty surrounding the cases of Diamond and King, including whether they wandered off or if they were taken. And so this makes widespread sharing of their story essential in the search for answers. So make sure we do our part as true crime consumers and not just listen to this for entertainment, but share this case, share their missing persons posters, join their Facebook, and support their family to hopefully help bring Diamond and King home. Diamond was born on February 18th, 1994 to Eugene and LaShawn. She was quickly diagnosed with a very rare genetic condition called Prader-Willi Syndrome, which is commonly referred to as PWS. And this rare condition affects several parts of someone's body, but most notably, it's characterized by things like growth hormone deficiency, behavioral challenges, and chronic hunger. And typically those with PWS are shorter in stature, they have weak muscle tone, learning disabilities, and then that chronic hunger tends to lead to obesity and then all of the health issues that come along with that. And Diamond did struggle with a lot of these things. At the age of 21, around the time that she disappeared, she had the mental capacity of a 5 to 7-year-old. So she required constant assistance throughout her day-to-day life. She also struggled with the chronic hunger, and she weighed around 260 pounds at the time. And this made it challenging for her to walk long distances. And she also walked with a pretty pronounced limp because with that weight, along with things like muscle weakness, her body just struggled a lot more. And while of course, all of this made life a little more difficult, Diamond and her family ensured that she was still living a fulfilling life. Diamond was known for her gentle and her bubbly personality. She was always laughing and smiling, like genuinely so happy to be alive. And I've seen the same picture of her over and over again. And I've seen it throughout the years through other coverage of this case. And like, it's just one that's ingrained in my brain. Her smile is so big. She loved all things beautiful, including getting her hair done. She loved to get her nails done. And she also took a lot of joy in caring for those around her. She would always find a way to help. Like, you couldn't tell her no. She was going to be in the middle doing something. She loved to be in the kitchen helping to cook. She loved to clean, anything she could get her hands on. Her parents ended up separating at some point during her childhood. So by the time she turned 13, her father, Eugene, became her primary caregiver, but it seems her mom still remained very, very active in her life. And she continued to live a fulfilled life. She attended a day school during the week to ensure that she stayed active in the community all the way up until she disappeared. And she also participated in the Special Olympics in 2014. She was living a very loving and enriching life. And for a good portion of her life, she had been living with her dad and her stepmom, Suzanne, in Hammond, Indiana. But in February of 2015, just a few months before she vanished, her family decided to make the move to Gary, Indiana, and they settled into a home on the 500 block of Matthews Street. And Diamond continued to thrive there. She was still going to school. She was still surrounded by family. And one of her all-time favorite people in the family was her 2-year-old nephew, King Walker. King was born on May 11th, 2013 to Ariana and Joshua, and he was just your typical toddler. He was full of energy, full of life. He loved to play and dance, but his favorite thing of all time was to run. And it was even better to be chased. And he and Diamond had a really great bond. Now, King's mom, Ariana, traveled to Chicago every single Saturday to attend school. And so on Friday nights, she would drop King off at the Bynum home with Eugene, Suzanne, and Diamond. And this is Diamond's sister. And so as a result, Diamond and King spent a lot of time together. And being the helpful person that Diamond was, she always looked forward to his arrival. Not only was it someone she could play with, but it kind of gave her this like sense of responsibility. And while she wasn't able to fully take care of King without assistance, she was there for plenty of other things. She was eager to play, change diapers, prepare his food, and they loved to take walks around the neighborhood. And this was the exact same routine that was followed on the weekend of Friday, July 24th and Saturday, July 25th. Ultimately, the day that both of them went missing and were never seen again. Ariana dropped King off as usual on Friday night, and early on Saturday morning, Eugene headed out for work. So this left Suzanne as the caretaker for both Diamond and King, which again was completely routine for this family. Diamond was in a particularly good mood that weekend because everyone planned to get together on Sunday the 26th for a party to celebrate Eugene's birthday. And so just the thought of a birthday party alone was incredibly exciting for Diamond, but especially so because there was a long-standing tradition that she would receive a few presents to open herself. And so this year she had asked for chocolate milk, which was one of her favorite drinks, and a bunch of beautifully scented soaps. And her grandmother had actually already purchased all those for her and was so excited to give them to her the following day. However, King, on the other hand, was feeling a bit under the weather that weekend, so he wasn't his typical energetic self, which in my opinion comes into play in their disappearance. Now, according to Suzanne, they all woke up at their normal time that Saturday. She made breakfast for everyone, and then Diamond and King each took a bath. And at around 10:20 a.m., Suzanne started to notice that King was really feeling unwell, and Diamond had already gone to lay down in Eugene and Suzanne's bedroom. And so Suzanne was like, maybe this is a good opportunity for everyone to kind of chill out and take a nap. So she placed King down in bed with Diamond, and she laid down as well, and pretty soon everyone drifted off to sleep. And in the next 40 minutes, something happened that changed this entire family's life. 40 minutes later, around 11 a.m., Suzanne woke up and realized that neither King or Diamond were in the bed with her. And she didn't immediately panic, thinking they likely hadn't gone far. Diamond maybe went down to look for some food. Maybe she was trying to get King a snack. Maybe they were playing. But after a quick search of the home, she realized they were no longer inside the house. So Suzanne set off to check the neighborhood. From what I've seen described, Diamond had a tendency to wander off on her own, and many different disabilities can lead to things like elopement. It's a very, very common thing. And so this was something that Diamond was known for. And she had done this frequently enough in her previous neighborhood that all the neighbors knew her. They were aware she would go and wander. And so if anyone saw her, they would just go out there, walk around with her, and then guide her back home so she wasn't by herself. But this was a completely different story because she was now in a new neighborhood. Nobody knew her. She wasn't familiar with her surroundings. So it was uncertain whether anyone would help her if they saw her, or if Diamond could guide her and King back home if they had wandered off from the house. But there were a few things that Suzanne was really banking on when it came to finding Diamond and King. Due to Diamond's disability, she struggled with her mobility. Like I told you before, she did have a limp that slowed her down. So when she did wander off, historically, she never got far. Plus, King wasn't feeling well, so he also likely was not in the position to go very far from the home. So when Suzanne checked the entire neighborhood, screaming out Diamond and King's name, and found no sign of either of them, that's when panic really began to set in. Suzanne immediately called Eugene and let him know what was going on, and he flew into a panic and rushed home from work to try and search the neighborhood for himself. And they also went ahead and made a call to the Gary Police Department to report King and Diamond as missing. Eugene's initial theory when he spoke to the police was that he believed King had likely woken up from his nap early and then decided to head outside to play while everyone was sleeping. But Diamond, who absolutely loved being with King and considered herself his babysitter, likely would have chased after him if he had run out the door. He noted that if she had just ventured a few houses too far in any direction, she wouldn't have been able to find her way back home. This was such an urgent situation because not only are we talking about the equivalent of 2 young children going missing in a place they were unfamiliar with, but Gary was also dealing with a severe heat wave, and finding them as soon as possible was absolutely critical. Although Diamond was 21 and appeared to be a young adult, she was incapable of caring for King or even properly caring for herself for an extended period of time. It was also terrifying because communication or lack thereof was a significant concern. King was only 2 years old and could only say a few words. He would be unable to communicate with anyone that he was lost or where he lived or provide pretty much any useful information. And Diamond, while not nonverbal, she rarely spoke, and so if someone didn't know her, they likely weren't going to understand what she was trying to tell them. And so consequently, she also wouldn't be able to explain that they were lost and they needed help. This situation is every single parent's worst nightmare come to life. When the police arrived on scene, they promptly decided to check the entire home just to make sure that this wasn't something else, that someone hadn't entered the home when everyone was taking a nap, maybe tried to lure the 2 of them out to abduct them. They just wanted to cross their T's and dot their I's, but they ended up finding no sign of forced entry, no sign of a struggle. And so the prevailing theory remained, in the authorities' eyes as well, that the 2 had walked out on their own. And again, since they couldn't have gone far and the neighbors were unfamiliar with them, the police decided the best bet was to begin going door to door to see if anyone had maybe taken them in without realizing who they were or where they live. They could have been 5 houses down for all anyone knew, safely eating a snack or a meal with a neighbor who just couldn't figure out their names or where they belonged or who their parents were and was just trying to get them comfortable before calling for any help. They also were hoping that they would be able to maybe speak to people that saw them walking by and give a direction they may have gone in. But every door they went to, Diamond and King weren't there and no one seemed to have seen them. Friends and family quickly printed out flyers and began spreading descriptions of both King and Diamond as far and wide as they could, hoping that someone would spot them and call in with information because they're obviously not in a car. They likely didn't get on a bus. They didn't get in an Uber or a taxi. They're going to be on foot somewhere and they're going to catch someone's eye. And while time is always of the essence in a missing persons case, this situation was on another level. They also decided to focus a considerable amount of their attention on the local restaurants. That was like one of the first places they wanted to search. So as I mentioned earlier, PWS causes chronic hunger. And to kind of make it more clear, it's not like you're hungry all the time, like you're just a little hungry, you need a snack. It creates an extreme need for food. And that extreme need can lead to desperate actions to satisfy that need. Eugene noted several instances where Diamond had gone to more extreme lengths to get food, such as taking items off of grocery store shelves and eating them while locked in the store's bathroom. She would sneak food pretty often, and every thought essentially revolved around her next meal for her. It was part of her disability. So if she woke up from her nap and chased King outside, once that excitement wore off, she likely would have immediately been seeking something to eat. And so this ended up leading to their first potential sighting and a lead on their whereabouts. Employees at a nearby McDonald's ended up catching wind of Diamond and King's disappearance. I can't confirm which McDonald's this was, but to give you a better idea of the surroundings of their neighborhood, they lived really close to a main road where there's a bunch of different businesses and restaurants. A lot of them are closed down or abandoned buildings, but there is a McDonald's, I want to say like around 2 miles down that road. So it would have been a really straight shot to get there. But these employees claimed that Diamond and King came in there just before they were reported missing. So they did not know to like keep an eye out for the two of them. And they were clearly searching for food. And so the employees provided them with some at no cost, but no one was sure where the two of them went afterward. Surveillance footage from this particular McDonald's location was reportedly gathered, but the search continued while it was being reviewed by Gary Police Department to verify if this was in fact Diamond and King. The police interviewed more residents in the neighborhood, and Diamond and King's family began searching everywhere they could think of that Diamond and King may have gone. And at this point, their theory was starting to shift towards a potential abduction. It would be very challenging to overlook Diamond and King. Pretty much anyone who interacted with them would have quickly realized that they both need assistance. The only way that they could have gotten far enough away from the neighborhood and remain undiscovered was if someone had picked them up and taken them away. However, authorities refused to issue an Amber Alert for either of them. Now, Diamond was 21, so she did not fit the age criteria, and there's different criteria and requirements that have to be met per state for an Amber Alert. Typically, there has to be identifying information in regard to a vehicle, and the person has to have been at least seen or strongly believed to have taken the victim. And again, it's 18 and under. So Diamond just really wasn't fitting that criteria. And King kind of did, but despite that, they opted not to release the alert for him. Now, there were various reasons that I've seen cited for this decision, and I'm not able to confidently say what they told the family, but one of the things that I did see on the many sources was that authorities believed that Diamond was family and she didn't necessarily abduct King and didn't pose a physical threat to him, which is one of the requirements in Indiana for issuing an Amber Alert, is that the person needs to be in imminent threat of danger, harm, death, the whole shebang. And so they didn't believe he fit under any of that criteria. And this is incredibly frustrating because King met the age requirement. He also did leave the house potentially with Diamond. And while it may not have technically been an abduction, I don't think them citing that she's a family member means anything, because every single Amber Alert I've ever gotten where I'm from, they're with their mom or with their dad. That changes absolutely nothing in my opinion. And while it may have been true that he wasn't in danger from Diamond specifically, their situation was inherently dangerous because she lacked the ability to care for him. So they refused to take action. And I don't know if they believed doing this was to protect Diamond, they didn't want anyone to think she was dangerous or, create any sort of stigma or idea about her. But I just don't necessarily think that was the best choice. So in response, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children sent out a mass text to every cell phone in the area, hoping to draw attention to the situation. And so at that point, it was just a waiting game to see if anyone stumbled across the two. Meanwhile, they continued to explore possible scenarios. Now, the possibility that Diamond might have been communicating with someone online and left to meet them was also briefly considered. I personally think the only reason that was brought up is because some people made assumptions based on her age without an understanding of her mental capacity. And so her father did come forward and say that she had access to a cell phone, she had access to a tablet, but the only phone number she knew was her father's. And it's not really clear if those items were taken with her. In one article I saw that they both had been left at the home, but I've not seen authorities confirm or deny either way. But her father also reiterated that she couldn't read or effectively communicate. So that theory was quickly dismissed. 4 days into their disappearance passed, and there were still no signs of their whereabouts. And so a large-scale search was held, but not just by local police, but also the Department of Homeland Security. Because of this heat wave and the overwhelming amount of abandoned homes and businesses in Gary, they focused their efforts there, and it was going to be a huge task. Gary's population has been steadily declining for decades, I think since like the 70s. So the amount of abandoned homes and businesses is astronomical. And I had heard this through my research several times, but when I finally got on Google Maps and started to look at Gary, Indiana, you can even tell through Google Maps that a lot of the town looks like a ghost town. It just looks like some post-apocalyptic situation. And so the idea was that maybe the two of them got overheated and tucked into an abandoned home to escape the sun. Or maybe it got dark and they needed somewhere to sleep. Or maybe Diamond went in a home looking for food. Maybe the building was condemned and they went in and accidentally got trapped. It was just a really scary situation and such an overwhelming amount of places to check. So over the course of 3 days, they searched a 24-block radius looking for Diamond and King, but there was still no sign of either of them. So with no real direction to go in, they decided to bring out a canine unit to find a trail to follow. Now, the dogs did in fact track both Diamond and King's scent out of the house and down to an alleyway behind their home. Their scent was followed to a nearby set of train tracks, which is about 4 or 5 blocks south on Clark and 9th, and then they were tracked to a nearby gas station on Clark and 11th, a few blocks further. But the dogs lost their scent after this. And I just want to be very clear that I'm unsure the order in which the scent was tracked. I'm not sure if this is like a clear line of direction or 2 separate places entirely they were tracked to, like from 2 different dogs. But this, just like the McDonald's sighting, does seem to possibly add up. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward walk to this location. The gas station would have had food, but nothing seemed to come from this information. Local police brought in helicopters. They continued participating in a few searches, but at this point, it was mainly family. And the one thing continuing to bring in hope was there were plenty of sightings. Like, this is a case where there's probably more sightings than any other information put together. One witness came forward claiming to see Diamond collecting cans in the 300 block of Madison Street in Gary. Now, this location would have been over 3 miles away from their home, which is a pretty good distance, but it doesn't seem that far-fetched in my opinion. Again, it's a straight shot down that one main road I spoke about from their home. It passes by the closest McDonald's that I can find. However, again, I can't confirm this is the McDonald's they allegedly were spotted at. And while Diamond probably wouldn't understand why she would be collecting cans, that kind of seems to be a main thing when it comes to this particular sighting, is why would she have been doing that? I feel like her helpful nature means that if someone had taken her in, like a homeless encampment or something, and then was like, hey, I need you to do this so we can get money, she happily would have. But this sighting seemed to fizzle out. More sightings came in, placing them at the McDonald's again, but still no surveillance seemed to prove it. Someone else claimed to see Diamond at a bus stop near the home, and they said Diamond was asking people for food, which again seems right on track. And they claimed someone gave her $50, but nobody knows where she went from there or if it was really her. And a lot of these sightings were not only called into question, but also a very scary possibility because King was not mentioned in a vast majority of them. And so where was he, and what would that mean if Diamond and King, for whatever reason, got split up. Another witness came forward claiming to have seen the both of them at a bus stop in Hammond, which is where Diamond used to live. And so this kind of got my mind going because it's only a 20-minute drive away. If someone came up to her and was trying to communicate with her, I wonder if she would have been able to say like Hammond as the last place that she remembered living. So maybe someone put her on a bus to Hammond and then she ended up at this bus stop and didn't know where to go next. But it doesn't seem again that any of these could be confirmed or denied. And by August 3rd, the searches were all called off, citing a lack of resources, leaving Diamond and King's family to physically search all on their own. Now, since it became more likely that the two had potentially been taken, authorities did decide to kind of go down this route and see where it led them. And they first and foremost started to narrow their focus on local sex offenders. And to everyone's shock and horror, there were 21 of them living within a mile of Diamond's home. And I just want to take a second at this point to remind you guys that there is a sex offender registry out there. You can go online and you can check and see what the situation is like around you just for your own safety and awareness. Authorities began combing through each one of these 21 sex offenders, questioning all of them, and eventually they seemed to have a solid lead. They actually publicly named a person of interest, which, just like in my last video, there is a difference between a person of interest and a suspect. And a person of interest is typically just someone they want to speak to. And so I believe they only named him because they could not locate him and wanted to question him, and not necessarily due to any evidence indicating his involvement. At least they've never come forward to say that they had any. So his face was plastered on the news and authorities spent weeks searching for him. Not only are they realizing they're surrounded by potentially 21 people that might have intentions of harming Diamond and King, but there were also remains of a young boy found in Chicago that they were waiting to get a positive ID on. Their families were also starting to receive several prank calls and social media messages and just awful comments from people claiming to have information or to know things or be responsible for whatever happened to Diamond and King. I mean, someone legitimately fully confessed to Eugene on social media and then later retracted their statement saying that it was all just a joke. I personally thought jokes were supposed to be funny. Another individual claimed they were tied up in a nearby basement, prompting an immediate search of that area. But ultimately, Diamond and King weren't found. People were just talking to talk and saying these horrible, horrible things and putting these awful ideas out there to the family and wasting resources and time. And all this information was just heavily weighing on everyone. I cannot even begin to fathom how all of this felt. But ultimately, they located that sex offender and were able to kind of rule him out as being potentially involved. The remains did not belong to King, and investigators seemed no closer to finding answers. Now, as August was coming to a close, more sightings ended up emerging, and these in particular have stuck out to me the most out of anything else in this case. And I'll kind of get more into why towards the end of the video. But these sightings suggested that Diamond and King were possibly in Chicago, about 22 miles away. Now, the first sighting involved a report that someone saw them both in the Roseland neighborhood of Chicago at a White Castle. And interestingly, this was also the first claim that I've seen where the two were accompanied by another person, another woman. But unfortunately, no description of this woman was ever provided to the public, nor was the validity of this sighting confirmed by authorities. Now, a second sighting came in from the exact same area. I'm talking down to the same Roseland neighborhood, and was at another fast food restaurant. So this time, witnesses claim they saw King and Diamond with two unknown women at Checkers. But again, this sighting was neither confirmed nor denied publicly, and no descriptions of the two women were ever released. Now, it is possible that these reports could have been mistaken for a similar looking duo, but for someone to mistakenly identify another 2-year-old and 21-year-old in the same neighborhood more than once, in my opinion, warrants a search through every single house in that area. But unfortunately, I don't think that is at all what happened. By 6 weeks into the investigation, the police decided to make a pretty strange move, in my opinion. They issued a silver alert for Diamond. And this is so frustrating for several reasons. It's another one of those double-edged swords where you want to be happy that they're doing something and they're putting an alert out there, but at the same time, it's like, you're a little late. You're a little bit late. 6 weeks too late to be exact. 2 months is a very long time to wait to release an alert for a missing person. I just don't know what good it's going to do at that point. It was also frustrating because they had refused to issue an Amber Alert for King because the situation didn't meet the specific criteria exactly. But here we are 6 weeks later, and they're willing to completely bend the criteria for a Silver Alert. Silver Alerts at the time were only for elderly people. So when people hear Silver Alert, they're gonna be looking for an elderly person, not 21-year-old Diamond with the mental capacity of a 5 to 7-year-old, which to me makes this choice seem even less sensible than issuing that Amber Alert for King to begin with. And to me, it's also hard to believe that an Amber Alert stating a 2-year-old was last seen wandering with a cognitively impaired 21-year-old wouldn't have captured everyone's attention. Like, had they put that out there, I can't help but feel like both of them would have been found. And it was even more frustrating for the family because there had apparently been a witness that saw King and Diamond put into a vehicle, just further suggesting that someone else potentially abducted them. But because this witness couldn't remember exact details about the vehicle, the tip was dismissed. It just seems like more fit into the need for an Amber Alert and that criteria than didn't. And they just wouldn't do it. And so the Silver Alert, in my opinion, just kind of seems like a slap in the face. And not just that, in the Silver Alert, they made no mention of King, despite the fact that he could have been a significant identifying factor in the search for Diamond. Why wasn't it on there? Why wouldn't they say she was last with a 2-year-old little boy? Both Diamond and King's families, as well as the public, voiced their concerns and questions similar to what I just said regarding this Amber Alert that was never issued and the strange Silver Alert, but the local police remained tight-lipped. They would not answer as to why they made these decisions. And this seemed to mark the beginning of a breakdown of communication and effort from law enforcement. It was like at this point, a wall went up and everything just went downhill. At the end of September, just after this alert had been put out there, Eugene held a press conference and he had invited the local police department to be involved. And this was another moment where my jaw just like dropped to the floor. Since when do families themselves arrange press conferences to try and keep the case in the public eye? I have been doing this for like 8+ years at this point, and I have never seen that in any of the cases that I've personally covered on my channel, or it was so few and far between that I don't even remember them. Why is the family having to do that? And why are the police refusing to come to them? Now, in the press conference, Eugene expressed the importance of not forgetting King and Diamond. He wanted to make sure everyone remembered that they were still missing. People still were out there looking for them, love them, care for them, and they needed to be brought home. But he also decided to make a plea out there to whoever may be holding them if that was the case. And again, at the time, they felt this was a huge possibility. The family said that they had no intentions of pressing charges on anyone. They just wanted King and Diamond to come home. And this also kind of ties into what I believe is a huge theory at the end of my video. But not only did he make these heartfelt pleas for Diamond and King to come home or someone to come forward, but he also started to express some of the issues that they had had with the investigation and potential leads to this point. Now, specifically, he brought up the gas station the K9s were led to on 11th and Clark. Diamond and King's family had apparently asked that gas station for the surveillance footage to be able to confirm if the two did in fact end up there. Maybe they could be seen getting into a car, maybe that's why their scent trail ended, but allegedly the gas station would not hand the surveillance over. And so the family got so frustrated that they held a protest outside demanding transparency. And while local police wouldn't show up to the press conference where Eugene mentioned this, they did end up later making a statement about this claim. They said that they already had the surveillance from the gas station and also claimed it was being reviewed. And so this just kind of shows you where the breakdown in communication is, because the family didn't even know they had any of that. And at that point, trust seemed to be broken. So they also weren't convinced that authorities would reveal it properly or that they actually were looking into it. Now, eventually, authorities did come forward and they claimed that the two weren't seen on the surveillance footage at the gas station, but their family has still yet to be able to review it for themselves. And honestly, please explain to me what that would hurt. If a family wants to sit down and look at, hours of surveillance footage just to be sure to know in their heart that their loved ones were not there, a place where canine dogs tracked them to, why wouldn't you let them do that? And to make matters worse, in a later press conference, the families of Diamond and King expressed concern over suspicious behavior from gas station staff at that gas station. So they said that shortly after Diamond and King went missing, that gas station actually shut down, which I don't think in and of itself is strange considering the quick turnover of a lot of businesses in the area there and how things become abandoned relatively quickly. But the employee who primarily worked at that gas station then transferred to another location. And so the family decided to track down this employee and approach them to ask whether they had seen Diamond and King, what they remembered. And allegedly, the employee reacted with absolute horror at the mere mention of the situation. Like, they were too scared to talk. They didn't want to communicate with the family. And so their family thought that was so weird. There must be something someone's hiding. Like, something had to have been seen. This isn't making any sense. And the same kind of situation occurred with the footage from McDonald's. Authorities claimed they had it, they reviewed it, but little information was provided to corroborate what these employees said they saw. So around this point in time, everything came to a halt. Leads slowed down before coming to a complete stop. The news already hadn't really focused on their disappearances much to begin with, but after a brief moment of attention, it returned to silence. So Diamond and King's family were out there on the streets of Gary alone, still searching day in and day out in abandoned homes and buildings for them, putting themselves at risk, exhausting themselves, because if they didn't do it, they knew nobody else would. In October of 2016, over a year later, the Northwest Indiana Major Crime Task Force agreed to look into their disappearance again, hoping that maybe fresh eyes would find something new, maybe something had been missed, and they could finally bring King and Diamond home. They spent a week at the Gary Police Department pouring through the files, re-interviewing everyone involved, and even sent off a few pieces of evidence for further testing at the crime lab. Now that kind of put a flag up in my brain because I'm unclear what those items were. What kind of evidence could they possibly have that they would need to send in for further testing? But regardless, they ultimately called it quits and found nothing new. Over the next few years, a handful of leads did continue to come in, and honestly, all of them were so tragic. Someone claimed that King and Diamond had been dumped in a body of water in Hobart, which is a town about 12 miles east. And so this information was acted on. Authorities conducted a search in the area in that body of water, but they claimed that nothing was found. However, I'm unsure what the search exactly entailed. Was the body of water drained? Was there sonar used? Were canines, like cadavers, involved? And so it kind of raises the question of whether more could potentially be done by volunteers to further confirm they aren't there. That is, if authorities would even let volunteers step in to help, which again, I'll get into in a little bit. Several witnesses also came forward claiming that they had personally spoken to a man who had been bragging about essaying Diamond. He allegedly afterwards then killed both Diamond and King and buried them in Ironwood Park in Gary. And the descriptive way that this person spoke about it, like spoke about King screaming the entire time they were doing it. I mean, who puts that much detail into something if they're making it up? And so that was horrifying for their family to hear. And so this particular park is only about 5 miles southeast of the home. And considering the possibility that a sex offender may have encountered them on their walk, and given the 21 offenders in the area, this information was taken very seriously by their family. And authorities did claim that they searched the area. But again, no one knows how extensive that search was. According to the last time I saw a family speak about it at a press conference, they don't know if they dug it up. They don't know if they just briefly went and took a walk around. Like, no one knows what exactly was done to be certain Diamond and King weren't buried there. I don't know if they have the name of this man that was going around claiming this, and if authorities were able to question him. It's all just kind of up in the air. But this tip seemed credible enough that 2 search organizations, including Texas EquiSearch, were willing to come and dig up this park to check for both King and Diamond. And Texas EquiSearch does not just willy-nilly act on tips. Like, there has to be something solid that brings them there. They know where to search. They know what equipment to use, like ground penetrating radar, all of these things. And so if they were willing to come, I feel like there's really something to this. But unfortunately, the Gary Police Department refused their help, wouldn't let them come in. And so understandably, this was confusing and upsetting for the family. The Gary Police Department had stopped conducting their own searches. They'd ceased in-depth investigations, citing a lack of resources. Like, that was the specific reason that they gave. But if that were the case, you would expect them to welcome this outside help. So why were they consistently turning people down? King and Diamond's family have held several press conferences to express the same issue repeatedly. People reaching out to them from their nonprofits, equipped with their own funds and equipment and experts, people ready to go. Like, just give us the green flag and we will get out there. But Gary Police Department put a stop to all of it, and it is so wildly frustrating. Diamond's mom even managed to find a private investigator that was willing to work with them pro bono, which, let me just tell you, is not something easy to find. But the investigator just needed access to the advanced files, like the advanced missing person case file, instead of just the basic one. And Gary Police Department refused, citing that the investigation was still active and open. And the number of times just in this last month alone that I've seen police refuse to release case files after years of stagnant investigation is honestly just about to send me at this point. So unfortunately, that private investigator who was so willing to do this work couldn't move forward and had to call everything off.
Aaron, 3 years later, it's still a mystery about what happened, but this family says no matter how much time passes, they have not lost hope. Candles flicker outside the Gary home where Diamond Bynum and her nephew King Walker were last seen 3 years ago.
It's just so hard for us to keep going through the same thing over and over and over again.
Tonight, their family members and friends gathered on Matthew Street. This year, they would have been celebrating King's 5th birthday.
I was just supposed to protect him. And I deal with it like every day.
Ariana Walker, King's mother, says no amount of time can help with her son's disappearance.
I don't know how to move forward from it. I don't know how to be okay. It's a constant battle every day. We got any answers, and it's just, we don't know what else to do. We're trying to keep the faith and believe that the Lord is going to bring them home.
From the minute they disappeared, Walker was extremely worried because she says Diamond does not have the ability to take care of King. Diamond has a health condition that leaves her with the mental capacity of a 7-year-old.
Neither one of them could speak very well, so that was the biggest concern. Like, if they were to meet someone, they couldn't tell them like where they live or anything.
With few tips coming to police, missing persons advocate Vera Giles Norris says it's up to Diamond and King's family to keep their names in the public.
It's only so much the police can do. And one of the things that we say in our organization is nobody's going to look for your loved one as harder than you.
Joseph Coles can relate. The father of missing postal worker Kiara Coles is joining forces with Walker.
I want her to, join in this battle I have too, because she has a battle as I have. So we work together, maybe we can conquer this battle together.
It's just very important that we support one another during these times.
In July of 2019, Nick Mick did share an age progression of King, which also I'm sure is such a conflicting time for everyone. I think you kind of like see an age progression put out there and you're like, oh, good. Like, this is exciting. But when you stop and you like pull the layers back, King's mom had to see what her baby possibly looks like. This entire family is seeing this age and growth in years that they have missed, which I'm sure is just this overwhelming, conflicting feeling, because they're also understanding the reality that they may never get the chance to see that face, to see King ever again, while also hoping that this is really what he possibly looks like, because if he's out there, someone has got to recognize him. Diamond and King were also finally entered into NamUs. It took a few years, but that was finally done. So if they pop up anywhere, as a Jane or a John Doe, thankfully there can be a match made. In 2020, there was a balloon release where unfortunately literally no one showed up. Things had just slowed down so much, and it was just their family fighting alone with a handful of activists in the area. And just before King's 7th birthday, they tried to call the police department for an update, but they got no call back. The level of heartbreak in this case is just earth-shattering. But despite it all, their family didn't lose hope. In 2021, they spoke of what they would do when they all reunited with Diamond and King, to take a vacation, to laugh and learn about safety and strangers and all of these different things. And I think it's so beautiful that they have the ability to experience such a tragic and awful thing where no certain outcome is promised, but still remain so optimistic after so many years.
And Taman, well, this day has been a painful reminder for relatives for the last 7 years, not knowing where Diamond and King are. But today they reconnected with investigators about their efforts to find them.
Heavenly Father, we ask that you give us the strength.
It may be 7 years since their disappearance, but big prayers still went up to those highest on Monday at a vigil outside the Gary Police Department for the safe return of Diamond Bynum and King Walker.
Diamond and King can't speak for themselves. They need me. They don't have no one else to speak up for them. So here we are.
LaShawn Walker has relied on faith and prayer that one day her daughter and grandson will be found. For some time, LaShawn was frustrated with the Gary Police Department for not doing more with the investigation. But today, she showed up at the police station and demanded a meeting.
I feel better the fact that I talked with you and you were willing to come out and speak with the press and let everybody know that they're still missing.
Commander Jack Hamady says there have been new leads, and the latest one was from 5 months ago, and that took them to the East Coast. But that led police nowhere.
If we could get a good lead towards an avenue, it could be anywhere in the country.
They also continue to advocate not just for Diamond and King, but also every missing child and adult in the area. In 2022, Diamond's mom and King's grandmother obviously spent Mother's Day alongside other moms missing their children in Daly Plaza, raising awareness and hoping to keep eyes on all of these cases. They don't want anyone to forget that they are still missing. Damon Lamar Reed also started a project in support of these families called Still Searching, and it features portraits of missing women in Chicago and surrounding areas, and he created a beautiful painting of Diamond and King to help continue this awareness. Now, there's still little talk about Diamond and King in the media. There are a handful of podcasts and social media posts, people trying really hard to make sure that they aren't completely forgotten, that they're not sucked into this black hole where old missing persons cases go to just fizzle out forever, because they deserve so much more. There's obviously lots of different theories about what could have possibly happened to both Diamond and King, but I'm going to get into what I personally so deeply feel is a possibility. I believe Diamond and King did decide to, for whatever reason, go take a walk outside of the home. I don't think they had intentions of going far, but again, given the offenders in the area, they wouldn't have to go far to run into some pretty serious trouble. I feel like if they had gone into an abandoned home, they would have been found by now. I have very personal knowledge of having a loved one with a disability and some of the things that tend to occur along with that. And unfortunately, one thing that is very common is that there are a lot of people out there that seem to, for some reason, believe that just because someone is disabled, they're suffering or neglected. I mean, all sorts of these assumptions are made simply because a person is disabled. I don't understand why people seem to have that mindset, but it's definitely a pretty big problem. And so I personally wonder, and it was the first thing that popped into my head before I even fully researched this case, was what if someone saw King and Diamond walking and approached them, and when they realized that Diamond was disabled, they felt this urge to protect them from a presumed danger, something they convinced themselves because Diamond was walking out on her own. And so they just went ahead and let that assumption cannon go off in their brain, and they wanted to keep them safe. You would be horrified to know how often things like this happen. I think someone may have convinced themselves that they were protecting Diamond and King and doing the right thing by taking them in and not telling authorities or family about finding them. And with Diamond being unable to communicate properly and King being so young, they likely never would have been able to tell anyone, ask anyone for help. King probably wouldn't even remember his previous life, that he lived with anyone else, that his mom's out there looking for him. I just really hope that that possibility has been considered, because that would mean that there's a large chance that Diamond and King are out there somewhere safe, potentially, hopefully, and can be found. Doctors may have seen them both, especially Diamond. King may be in school somewhere, and he'd be at the age where he's on social media. You can't miss Diamond's smile. So that's why I felt so pushed to share this story, because I so strongly feel this is a possibility. When I was listening to Sarah Turney and Voices for Justice cover this case, she brought up a very glaring point that I do think needs to be mentioned here. And it's the fact that this case probably didn't get a lot of attention for a handful of reasons. First and foremost, we're talking about two Black people. We are talking about someone with a disability. And unfortunately, that always means less clicks. That always means less views, less media coverage. Sarah mentioned the fact that that's not even about being woke or, whatever you want to call it. It's based in fact. It's based on analytics. And I want you guys to watch this video. Look at the numbers of it. You can even go back through all of my videos, find the videos where there's a person of color, and see the difference in views. And that's why it is so important to share these cases. I don't care how old they are. I don't care how little coverage they got from local media or on social media. Everyone deserves to have their story told. And the more we can get this information out there, the more people that can hear these cases. There's an absolute army of people in the true crime community. Imagine if this was your family. Imagine if this was your daughter or your nephew or, your son. I speak all the time about how we have such a responsibility in the true crime community to be ethical and to make changes and make a difference. We are not the media. I am not News Channel 7 or whatever the heck you want to say, that are bound by these different restrictions, that are bound by all of these things. We can change things on social media. We can make a difference. And this is a perfect example of that. You guys, I might not be the biggest channel out there, and that's fine. I can live with that, because I will always create a space here for everyone. It's not about numbers. It's not about money. It's about getting these stories out there. And I know that was kind of a tangent to go on, but it's just been something in my mind for the past 1 or 2 years now. After seeing things kind of shift in this community, I can go to sleep at night knowing that I did the right thing and tried to make a difference, and that every single one of you watching this is on the same page as me, and I could not ask for anything more. So please, with that little rant over with, share this video, share the missing persons flyers, and make sure to click on the videos that maybe you wouldn't normally click on. And make sure to support these creators that cover things that may not be just sensationalized news. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and go, you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to Diamond and King's story. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below to become a part of the Hallan fam, so that we can hopefully bring them home together or bring them justice together. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.